even more important. Today we discussed Russia's continued military build-up in and around Ukraine. The risk of conflict remains real, and we continue to call on Russia to de-escalate and choose the path of diplomacy. NATO is a defensive alliance which does not threaten Russia or any other country. But we will always do what is necessary to protect and defend all our allies. And I welcome that allies are stepping up. For instance, Denmark is sending a frigate to the Baltic Sea and will deploy more jets to Lithuania as part of our Baltic air policing mission. France has expressed its readiness to send troops to Romania under NATO command. The Netherlands is sending fighter aircraft to Bulgaria for air policing and is putting units on standby for a NATO response force. Spain is sending ships to join NATO naval forces in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean and considering sending jets to Bulgaria. And the United States, for the first time in decades, put a carrier strike group under NATO command. We are considering to further enhance our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. This could include the deployment of additional NATO battle groups. These deployments are proportionate and in line with our international commitments, and they reinforce European security for all of us. At the same time, NATO remains ready to continue dialogue with Russia. Following the NATO-Russia Council earlier this month, I have now invited all members to a series of further meetings to address European security, including the situation in and around Ukraine, NATO-Russia relations and how to reduce risks and increase transparency, and arms control, disarmament and non-proliferation. So NATO allies are ready to engage in genuine dialogue and to seek constructive outcomes. And we will continue to consult with our key partners, Finland and Sweden, as we take this dialogue forward. Let me be clear, NATO will not compromise on core principles. We stand for the right of each nation to choose its own alliances, and NATO's door remains open. While NATO cooperates closely with Finland and Sweden, we fully respect your strong and independent security policies. It is for Finland and Sweden alone to decide your own path, not Russia, not anyone else. Sovereign nations have the right to self-determination. NATO will always respect that. Others must respect that too. So, dear Pekka, dear Ann, once again, welcome to both of you. And thank you again for Finland and Sweden's deep friendship and partnership with NATO. Our cooperation makes us all safer and more secure. So then, I give the floor to you, Pekka.
Thank you, Secretary General Stoltenberg. Dear Jens, we had a very good discussion today on the security situation in Eastern Europe and also how it influences to the wider security also in our region and the Baltic Sea region. I appreciate the dialogue between NATO, Finland and Sweden very much. In the current situation, transatlantic unity is key. Dialogue and diplomatic efforts continue, seeking ways to increase transparency and trust is welcomed. It's positive that NATO remains open to continue its dialogue with Russia. In this dialogue, of course, both sides are needed. Respecting the core principles of European security is important. Challenging the UN Charter, Helsinki Final Act and the Charter of Paris for New Europe treaties we have all signed upon undermines international security and the rules-based international order. Defending these principles is now essential than ever. We cannot return back to the Europe with spheres of influence and interest. We welcome that NATO has reaffirmed the continuation of its open door policy. It's a vital element for European security. Continuing the policy is important also for Finland. Finland engages in pragmatic and wide-ranging partnership cooperation with NATO since 1994. In recent years, the partnership cooperation with NATO has taken many steps forward. Finland is one of NATO's 6 enhanced opportunities partners. The 30+2 cooperation between Finland, Sweden and NATO strengthens stability and predictability in the Baltic Sea region. The cooperation is mutually beneficial. We at last October also had an excellent meeting, a visit of NATO Council to Finland. Thank you for that. Finally, Finland is not a member of NATO, but maintaining a national room to maneuver and freedom of choice are also integral parts of Finland's foreign, security and defence policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Jens. Sweden's partnership with NATO is a central part of our security and defence policy. Our enhanced opportunity partner status will remain the platform as well as the 30+2 dialogue, which we believe is of mutual importance to Sweden, Finland and NATO. Let me first stress how deeply concerned we are over Russia's military reinforcements around Ukraine and Moscow's aggressive rhetoric. This is already the worst ongoing armed conflict in Europe, and there has been almost 15,000 casualties and some 1.5 million internally displaced people. Our support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity remains firm. European and transatlantic unity is key. I think NATO and EU partners have made it very clear to Russia that there is no place for an armed conflict in Europe and that any further acts of aggression would be met with massive consequences. Sweden has had intense contacts with US and European colleagues within the EU, the OSCE, and with NATO on this issue. My visit here today is one such opportunity to share information and discuss the current, very serious situation. I want to thank the Secretary General Stoltenberg for the close dialogue and the cooperation that we have. It is particularly important that we have had this opportunity to meet together with Finland. As always, we cooperate very closely with Finland. We are closely following developments, carefully analyzing the Russian military buildup of troops and hardware. We are preparing for a number of scenarios. Today, we also discussed the proposal put forward by Russia. The core of the proposal is to attempt to rewrite what we call the European Security Order, the arrangement for Europe's security that were commonly agreed after the Cold War. One of the main principles of this security order is that every state has the right to choose its own security arrangement, whom it cooperates with, whether to join or stay in a military alliance, etc. This is what Russia wants to roll back, and this is not acceptable. Let me again reiterate that the fundamental principles underpinning the European security order must remain non-negotiable. We support a dialogue with Russia on matters such as arms control, rules for military exercises, codes of conduct, confidence-building measures. This is something that we are ready to discuss with Russia. Having been the chairperson of the OSCE for a year, I think the OSCE is the right forum for such discussions. Let me finally and again stress that we support the ongoing diplomatic efforts. We commend NATO for its strong engagement in the present crisis and welcome the dialogue between NATO and Russia. We expect Russia to choose to continue the dialogue and accept NATO's offer to organize further meetings in the NATO-Russia Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take questions from here in the press room and also we'll try to take a couple of questions online. We'll go to Swedish TV. Gentleman in the second row.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary General. What was the outcome of today's meeting and how will this situation affect NATO's relationship with Sweden?
For NATO and for me, it is extremely important to have very close consultations with Finland and Sweden and to share analysis and to share assessments as we face a very challenging security situation in Europe because of the military build-up in and around Ukraine by Russia, and also because of the threatening rhetoric by Russia. And I think we all agree on the need to pursue a diplomatic path. I updated both Aninde and Pekka Haavisto on the diplomatic efforts of NATO. The fact that we had a meeting of the NATO-Russia Council for the first time for a long time, I think that was a positive sign, at least a step in the right direction, and that NATO has invited Russia to participate in further meetings, in a series of meetings in the NATO-Russia Council, and outlined also the different areas we are ready to discuss with Russia. At the same time, of course, we are working for the best, we are hoping for the best, but we have to be prepared for the worst, meaning that we also are, as NATO, are increasing our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. You asked about what this means for the relationship with NATO and Sweden. Well, I think it highlights the importance of the close relationship, that fully respecting the Swedish decision to not be a NATO member, we welcome very much the close partnership. Sweden is an enhanced opportunity partner. Sweden and Finland are our closest partners, and the fact that we work together, that we share information, that we exercise together is something which is important, and the importance is demonstrated in the situation we are faced with now. Let me add finally that I welcome the fact that Sweden has reinforced its military presence at Gotland, because that is important for the whole Baltic Sea. It's a strategic importance for the Baltic Sea, and of course NATO is present there. We have littoral states there, and NATO allies have also increased its presence in the Baltic Sea region.
We'll go to Helsinki Sanomat, lady in the fourth.
Yeah, Mr. Stoltenberg, as you said, NATO is sending reinforcements in Eastern Europe. Could you be a bit more precise? What is NATO's response to increased Russian military presence in the Baltic Sea?
So I have listed some of the additional deployments with more air policing, with more naval presence. Currently there are 5 NATO ships in the Baltic Sea region, and we are also strengthening our presence in the air with the air policing. We already have deployed battle groups, NATO multinational battle groups, to the 3 Baltic countries and Poland. And we are, for the first time in a decade, we have a US aircraft carrier group under NATO command. That is not in the Baltic Sea, but of course it matters for the security of the whole of Europe. So we have stepped up, but this is defensive. NATO is not threatening Russia. It's proportionate, and at the same time as we step up, we also invite Russia to continue our dialogue, because we are ready to engage in good faith in the efforts to find a political solution. We are ready to listen to the Russian security concerns, also in the Baltic region, but we will not compromise on the right for every nation to choose its own path, and that also applies for Sweden, Finland, for other European nations, and not, of course, compromise on NATO's right to protect and defend all allies. But again, I think what we see now with the increased tensions, the deteriorating security situation, just highlights the importance of the very close partnership we have built with Finland and Sweden over the last years, including in the Baltic region, with exercises, with a high degree of interoperability, and the very close political consultations that was also demonstrated today with the meeting with the 2 foreign ministers.
Okay, gentleman over here.
Thank you, Andreas Liljer on Swedish Public Radio. 2 questions, if I may. You talk about increasing the cooperation between NATO and Sweden. Can you be more concrete? What could this increase in cooperation look like? And secondly, we see now an increase in defense capacity in Eastern Europe. Do you see any risks that this might actually create further tensions, or if it could be used by Russia to be even more aggressive? And feel free, if you like, to answer in Scandinavian.
Okay, then I think I answer in Scandinavian. Vi verdsetter veldig det nære samarbeidet med Sverige og Finland. Vi øver mer med Sverige og Finland. Vi har en veldig høy grad av interoperabilitet, det vil si at våre styrker kan operere sammen. Det har vi gjort også i militære operasjoner fra Irak til Vest-Balkan, hvor vi bidrar til å sikre fred og stabilitet. Vi utveksler informasjon. Det er viktig for NATO, men jeg opplever også at det er viktig for Sverige og Finland. Det er ingen andre land som er nære partnere til NATO enn Sverige og Finland. Vi hadde også et veldig vellykket besøk av det nordatlantiske råd til Sverige og Finland i fjor høst, hvor vi både så svenske og finske styrker operere. Vi så hvordan de øvde sammen, og det understreker det veldig viktige signalet vi sender om at dette er nære partnere, selv om de ikke er medlemmer av NATO. Vi er beredt til å trappe opp både når det gjelder øvelser, når det gjelder ytterligere tette politiske konstellasjoner, og når det gjelder andre tiltak som kan styrke vår evne til å operere sammen, interoperabilitet mellom de tre landene. Dette er arbeid som pågår på mange nivåer, og som er bra for stabiliteten i Europa, og spesielt i det baltiske området. La meg også føye til at det har over de senere årene også blitt en ytterligere forsterking av det nordiske forsvarssamarbeidet mellom Sverige, Finland, Danmark, Norge og Island. Og det er jo et samarbeid som også styrker samarbeidet med NATO, for der har du ikke medlemsland, Sverige og Finland, som samarbeider tettere og tettere med medlemsland som Norge, Danmark og Island. Og det handler blant annet om øvelser i luften, luftforsvar og andre ting. Så det andre spørsmålet ditt. Altså, alt vi gjør er defensivt. Det er noe vi gjør for å både få en god situasjonsforståelse. Vi må øke vårt nærvær for å ha full oversikt over hva som skjer. Så når NATO har økt sitt nærvær for eksempel i Svartehavsregionen, men også i det baltiske området, så er det fordi at når spenningen øker, så er betydningen av å ha god og riktig informasjon i sann tid helt avgjørende. Så en del av vårt økte nærvær i østlige alliansen er simpelthen for å ha god situasjonsforståelse, som vi også deler med andre land. Det andre er selvfølgelig at vi må sende en melding, eller fjerne enhver rom for tvil over NATOs evne til å beskytte alle allierte. Og det er for å forebygge krig og konflikt. Og det er derfor vi har økt vårt militære nærvær i det baltiske området, og derfor vi nå vurderer å øke ytterligere vårt militære nærvær øst i alliansen, også i Svartehavsregionen.
Okay, we'll go to the Finnish news agency, the lady in pink.
Thank you, Heta Asinen from the Finnish news agency. Secretary General, you already mentioned that the political cooperation and the exercises are very important in this situation. But what else is NATO expecting from its close partners in this kind of situation? And I would also like to hear from the foreign ministers. What is Finland and Sweden? What are you ready to offer for this cooperation in this situation? Thank you.
I can be very brief, because in one way I will answer. The main issue is that we work together in many different ways, on exercises, on training, on just improving the way we can operate together. And Finland and Sweden have participated in different NATO missions and operations, from Afghanistan, Iraq, maritime deployments, to our presence in the Western Balkans. And we are all ready to step up and to do more. And also to share more information and to share more situational awareness. And again, when we see high tensions, especially in the eastern part of the alliance, and including also in the Baltic region, of course, we share information with Finland and Sweden. They share information with us. That's good for their security, it's good for our security, and that is highlighted with the situation we see now.
Maybe from the Finnish perspective, one remark on the current situation when Russia has made the proposals and to US and to NATO. When these answers are modified by NATO and by US, it's very important that we are aware what is going on and that things are not decided over the heads of the countries that are not NATO members or are not directly involved in these talks. And of course, there also comes the importance of the OSCE as an organization and the Helsinki Final Act and the Paris Charter and those wider European security principles. These has to be taken into consideration. Secondly, like the Secretary General said, the sharing of the information is very important in this kind of, that we have the common analysis of the situation, and then of course our experience and our continuing programs for training and common exercises and so forth. So this technical cooperation and military cooperation, of course, is with NATO has been very intensive, and we are doing it on the benefit of our own security and our own defense capability.
Yes, just to say, I can just agree what the gentleman has said, but also the political dialogue is very important. And there was for several years, there was no taking part of foreign ministers in the foreign ministers meeting, but now I and Finnish foreign minister has taken part both in Brussels and Riga on different kind of important discussions. And for example, when we give our information and analysis of what's happening in the high north and Arctic is where we have also special experiences, so that has been very well received. I also would say it's not like it's a one-way street, as the Secretary General said about Gotland and having the possibility in the Baltic Sea for also our troops to show that we have a strong defense. I would remind that Sweden has increased our military spending since 2014, when the annexation of Crimea and so on, with 80%. That's quite a high increase in our military spending.
We'll go to Kauppalehti, the lady in green.
Thank you. Sara Koho, I work for the Finnish paper Kauppalehti. As we all know, Secretary General, Russian President Vladimir Putin has demanded that NATO stops expanding in Europe. However, in a recent interview, the Finnish President Sauli Niinistö had with a German newspaper Zeit, he said that in his interpretation, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has withdrawn these demands when it comes to Sweden and Finland. And I would like to know if you share his interpretation. Has Russia withdrawn its demands?
What we have seen is what they have proposed in the proposals for legally binding agreements or treaties between NATO and Russia, and that was submitted to us some weeks ago in parallel with the proposed treaty between Russia and the United States. There are two proposals on the table for legally binding agreements between Russia and the United States and Russia and NATO. And in the treaty with the proposed draft treaty with NATO, it is clearly stated that there should be no further enlargement of NATO with any country. So based on that, it is clear what Russia has demanded, and we are ready to sit down and discuss many issues with Russia on arms control, transparency, and the security situation in Europe, including the situation in and around Ukraine. But we are not ready to discuss core principles for European security. And as the Finnish president has stated, and many other leaders, both in Finland and Sweden, have stated, is that it is for Finland to decide if they want to apply for membership in NATO, and then it's for Finland and 30 NATO allies to decide finally on the issue of membership. And that's exactly the same for Sweden. So I just base my assessments on what Russia has put forward in a written proposal for a legally binding agreement banning any further enlargement of NATO. My message is that NATO's door remain open, and then we will respect sovereign independent decisions by sovereign independent countries like Finland and Sweden on whether they would like to apply for membership or not.
Okay, I see one more question here, and then we'll take a couple online. Gentleman over here.
Heikki Piola from MTV Finland. USA and United Kingdom have started already to move family members of personnel to leave Ukraine. Should all NATO and EU members do now same order?
This has to be a national decision. We share information among NATO allies. We also share information with close partners as Finland and Sweden. We have NATO personnel in Kiev. We have 2 NATO offices in Kiev. We have, of course, assess and follow the situation closely, but we have not made any decision to withdraw those people working for NATO in Kiev.
Okay, we'll go online to Club Z Media Group, Momchil Injov.
Thank you. My question is to Secretary General. As it became clear today, and you told it recently, the NATO allies began to send more ships and jets to enhance deterrence and defense in Eastern Europe. And are there any plans to deploy immediately more troops in the southeastern flank of NATO, especially in Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey? And has NATO made a new risk assessment? And if so, could you please specify? Thank you.
Also, we are constantly assessing the risks, and we are constantly sharing information among allies, and we have stepped up our capabilities to collect information. One of the reasons why we have increased our presence in the Black Sea region is just to be able to monitor and to follow the situation very closely, to collect more information. So our presence, our increased presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and in particular in the Black Sea region, is partly to collect information, to assess the situation very closely, but also, of course, to be able to respond to any situation that will require a response from NATO allied countries. So I think this is prudent behavior. What we do is defensive, it's proportionate, and it's fully in line with our international obligations. And of course the NATO presence is in no way threatening because it is compared to the significant military buildup by Russia in and around Ukraine, a very limited presence, but it sends a strong signal and message of our unity and our resolve to protect and defend all allies. We are considering to further increase our presence also in the southeast of the alliance, and we are considering also to have battle groups not only in the Baltic region, but also in Poland, but also in the southeast of the alliance. But no decision has been taken. We will assess and make the decisions when the time is right.
Next question online goes to Terry Schultz from Deutsche Welle.
Hi, thank you very much. This is a question for all 3 officials there. I just came back from Sweden, as a matter of fact, and it was explained to me that the country feels secure without NATO membership because there are so many partnerships, and also because of the fact that if Gotland, for example, were attacked, it would be in NATO's own interest to come to the defense of Sweden. So do all 3 of you agree that that is enough of a security guarantee without Article 5 for this region? And then just a second question, because of course I'm reporting for Germany. Mr. Secretary General, are you disappointed in Germany for the comments of the naval chief? For the comments of the naval chief that said that Russian President Putin deserves respect, and also in its refusal to allow military equipment from Estonia to be delivered to Ukraine, as Finland in fact has allowed. Thank you very much.
Also, first on the Article 5, I think I will leave it to the Finnish and Swedish foreign ministers to reflect on that. As I said, we have extremely close partnership with both Finland and Sweden. Then, of course, there is a difference between membership and not membership, and that is something Sweden and Finland has to assess and make their own decisions. We will not interfere or try to influence those discussions in Finland and Sweden. We respect their decisions. Then on Germany, also Germany is a NATO ally. They have agreed to send the same messages as we have done in NATO over some time now, with both the message of readiness for dialogue with Russia, the NATO-Russia Council, and we are now working on our written proposals that we will convey to Russia in the near future. And Germany is, of course, strongly part of that, but Germany is also part of the increased presence in the eastern part of the alliance. Germany is leading the battle group in Lithuania, and what we do now is that we are stepping up within existing NATO frameworks, the air policing, the standing naval forces of NATO, and other existing NATO forced structures. And again, this is something Germany has agreed to, and Germany also contributes. So NATO allies are united in their response to the threatening Russian military buildup, both when it comes to dialogue, but also when it comes to sending a message of unity and strength.
From the Finnish perspective, Finland, of course, is a democratic country, and our decisions are based on the opinion of the people and political parties. The majority has not been in favor of the NATO membership, but for the close partnership with NATO, which we currently have, and our defense doctrine builds on maintaining a strong national defense capability. We have a conscription army, we have 280,000 reservists in Finland. We have just made a decision to renew our fighter capacity to F-35 and so forth. And of course, we are increasing our preparedness and readiness whenever there are new security concerns. We have been investing also quite a lot to tackle the new kinds of hybrid and cyber threats. But the close cooperation with NATO, of course, is something that people support.
And I would say that, of course, every country has to see what is the best way of keeping our country and our people out of war, what will keep them safe. And that is how you determine what kind of security arrangement you want to have. And for us in Sweden, we are military non-aligned, and that is something that has served us very well during very, very difficult times. And we think it still serves us well, together with a strong defense. And I just mentioned here earlier, since 2014, we have increased our defense spending with 80%, and with close cooperation with other partners. We have about 20 agreements with countries, NATO countries, other countries, organizations, and the closest partnership we have is with Finland.
Thank you very much. This concludes this press conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much.